Hello, and welcome to the third practice for the colored pencil sphere Bellringers. Today, our focus is having smooth transitions. So that means do the different values you created blend together smoothly. So if you look at this example, the one with the X over it, you can see that it's got very distinct sections of color that do not blend very smoothly together. So today, I am going to be showing you ways to problem solve this issue if you do happen to have some sections in your Bellringer sphere. So we are getting started with our black pencil. We're going to spin our paper so that we have our value scale closer to us. We're going to give ourselves the outside of our border. We're going to break that in half. We're dividing these two sections so that we have 4, and then once more so that we have 8. In these sections, I want you to turn it back. We're writing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, spinning it back so that the value scale is closer to us again, and we are going to fill in value 7 so that it is completely shiny. Remember that we give ourselves a border first. We're using small little circles to fill in that black space until it is completely solid with no grainy marks or lines or texture showing through. From here, we are going to transition so that we are fading out. But one thing that is sometimes helpful is to start with value 5, and we are making value 5 the lightest that we can color with this pencil. Now I'm going to come in and I want to add a medium tone that's going to look different from these values here. So we've got our medium tone, we've got our dark value, and we've got our light value. Now I want you to take a look up at the board now. I have a very clear problem. You can see the difference between 7, 6, and 5. So all I need to do to address this problem, and I want you to watch this up here, I'm going to take my pencil and using a layer of circles, I am just going halfway in this section, halfway in this section, making a row of circles, and that just bridged that gap just a little bit. And then I can go along this new line and help to smooth that out. So whenever you see a line, so let's look at this one. Take a look up at this board here. We are going to smooth out this fade. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm adding just a layer of circles directly on top of that line. And then I've got a new line, so I need to do the same thing, but I'm just blending it out by adding another layer of circles. Now, when we're working in our dark areas like the dark and the medium, we want to find a nice crispy part of our pencil to help us fill in the texture when we're working with dark values. But as we work our way down and we are slowly transitioning to our lighter values, you can spin your pencil in your hand so that you've got a nice flat edge to work with for fading out to white. And we are fading out to white into the section for number 4. So we're working on this value scale very carefully. We want it to be as smooth as we can get it before we bring in our next color. So we're smoothing that out. Now we're going to switch to our color. We are filling that in solidly right underneath our value. So we're going to fill in number 4 completely solidly. And then we're filling it in solidly again, just starting on our lighter side, and we are working our way up the value scale. So we're filling this in completely solidly all the way back. So we're not lightening our pressure, we're heavily coloring all the way up until we reach that solid black section. Now we are going to fade out to our 1. So we're going to come down here using the flat edge of our pencil. I'm making the lightest value that I can to help transition that out to our 0 for white. So we want to have a nice smooth transition. And now I am just going to bridge the gap. So I'm trying to go from this darkest value of my color, and I'm slowly transitioning to that lightest version of our color. And remember that as we're working with our darker values, you want to spin your pencil, and I want you to actually try that now. So spin your pencil as you're working in those darker values, and as we reach the area where we're trying to fade out to white, that's when we mostly rely on the flat edge of our pencil. So we really want to focus on using the correct part of our pencil lead to help us out as we're completing this process. Once your value scale is super smooth, you've got a nice transition from dark to medium to light, and you don't have any sections left behind, then you're going to come in with your white colored pencil. We always clean it off first. Then we're starting on the light side, and we are using very heavy circles to kind of adjust the colored pencil that's underneath. So we're adjusting our color with our white colored pencil. So we're just kind of smudging it at the end there so that it fades out smoothly. And then we're just filling it in super solidly all the way back up to where our original solid color was at 4. Now you can always go back in and reapply your color. You can bring in the black and the white. You just can continue to layer until you feel like it's reached that perfect transition. Next, we are going to spin our paper, and we are drawing in those little tips that help us make sure these are in the right locations. So we've got this line coming straight down from the outermost edge, same from the bottom outermost edge. That gives us our triangle. We're going to connect those 2 points to make our highlight section, and then we are adding a small little stretched out triangle directly above that. Now inside of this space, we are not starting at solid black. Instead, we're starting at a dark medium, and we want to have that fade as we reach the end of this triangle. So it should get lighter and lighter as it wraps its way across. Now take a look up at the board, and this is what it should look like. So this is your goal for the end result. As we continue on, we are fading this out here into our shadow section, or our highlight section, and we want to leave just a little bit of white, just a small amount, and then we are coming up above this space and we are just fading this black out the best that we can. Now up at the top, it is a little bit more challenging because it's a faster pace change or transition. So we're using that soft edge of our pencil to go along that edge and to help smooth these values out so that they fade to white nice and smoothly. Now we're using that flat edge, just such light pressure. Be careful that you're not going too dark with this step. That is the more common mistake that students make at this point. So we're just helping the black values to fade out to white as smoothly as we possibly can. Once you've got that smooth transition, I want you to take your color and on your reference photo, I want you to outline that eyeball shape. Now we are going to create that line with our flat edge. So if your color doesn't have a good flat edge, you really need one for this. So you can even use a separate area of your practice paper to make a flat edge for your pencil. And now I am placing my finger just like right where that line is, and I'm just starting to build up the outline where it's fading out to white for that eyeball. I know this is very light for you guys to see, but we are just creating that same line that we made on our reference photo, and I'm making that line with my lightest values with small little circles and helping it to transition out to white in that location. Now I am going to go along this edge of my shadow triangle, and I'm giving myself a border around it. We're filling in our lightest areas first, so we can go through and completely fill our highlight area of our sphere. And we want to give ourselves a couple lines of solid blue through here. So we've got that first line. I'm going to give myself a second line of solid color, and then a third line of solid color. So we should have about the same thickness of blue on the top of this line as we do on the bottom for this highlight. Now I'm going to start on the inside of my shadow, working from the lighter side towards the darker side, using very heavy pressure and small circles. I am working my way back all the way to that darkest value that we started with. All right. Now we are slowly building this value up so that it has a nice transition to that eyeball space. And you'll notice that we have a larger section on the left side of our sphere that needs to lift up to reach that eyeball space. So we're just bringing that section up with these lighter values to try to fade out right at that eyeball line that we created for ourselves. So we're just going back and forth, continuously building these layers until they have a nice smooth transition. And if at any point you can see sections in this portion, you will address that by going over the top of those sections right on that line where it's dividing it, and you are adding another layer of circles to that space to help it transition a little bit smoother. Now we are just continuously adding more to this space. We're building that layer, and this does take a little bit of time. If you cruise through this, it's not going to be as smooth as it should be, so really take your time trying to avoid having any solid lines, avoid having any texture still showing through, any sections that are left over that have not been addressed fully. Take a look up at the board and make sure that yours is matching the quality that we're trying to get here. I quite often blow away the crumbs at this phase so that I can really see if I've missed any spots that need to be filled in just a little bit more. All right, now we are going to come in with our white pencil. We clean it off always. We're going to start on that outer edge of our eyeball, and we are just using circles to kind of manipulate that color underneath the white. So we're using white to like smudge and blend that layer that we've already added. You can use this tip to really help you eliminate sections from this lighter area. Now, sometimes you will go back too far maybe and you lose some of your solid color, so you can always go back and reapply some of your color over the top of that space if you did kind of start to lose some of those transitions or some of your solid color. All right, next we are working on the shadow. So we're going to bring in our solid black. We're coloring up against that sphere, drawing our lines straight out, and then curving it up along the bottom edge, down along the top edge. We're going to fill that whole triangle solidly, solid black. We're going to bring that black underneath our sphere a little bit farther. Then we are stretching out our value scale, and we want to fade to a medium tone as we reach the end of this value. Next, we're filling in the background space, so I'm going to give myself a light border around my sphere and my rectangle. I am turning my paper so that I'm coloring on the right side of the line because I'm right-handed. The left side of the line if you are left-handed. This border is very important. I am not able to do it without the border, and neither are you. So please make sure that you take your time, fill this in so it's nice and crisp. This takes away some issues that you might have later on. All right, now that we've got our border, we are just filling this in with little circles in the background. We want this to be as even as we can get it because this is where you make it even. If you color and you've got patches and then you come in with your medium toned color on top, it's still going to show those patches. So this is really where you take care of this task. Like, you have to make sure this layer is even before you bring in your color on top. So we're filling with small circles. Make sure you're not going too dark in this space. That's one error students do make. All right, next we are going to fill our tabletop. So remember that we need to leave those little crisp white lines on the edge of the tabletop. We want to make them as skinny and precise as possible. Then we are filling in, but I'm gonna outline my shadow and not go through that space because we don't want that black from the shadow to spread into our tabletop. So again, I'm lining that shadow, giving myself a border, filling the lighter area first, and now that I'm on this side of my sphere, I am going to turn it so that I can give myself a nice crisp border. Leave that little highlight. Now that we've got our border, we are just filling that light patch with small little circles. Next, we're filling our shadow, but we want to make sure that we don't go up and down through the shadow because that will pull the black into our tabletop section, and that's not very realistic if it's like going up and down through that space. So we just want to make sure that we don't pull that black out into our tabletop at all. Just filling right inside that space. Now our final step is to give ourselves a border around our background and then to fill with small circles. Remember to turn your paper even for this second pass. Sometimes people do it for the first pass and then not for the second pass, but it is just as important. Make sure we keep that nice and crisp. And the final thing we are doing for this practice is filling in that background space with small circles and heavy, heavy pressure. All right, so now because this is the practice where we are focused on having smooth transitions, I want you to do one last thing where you go through and look to see if you do have any sections, and I want you to try to fix them because it is a very doable step. All you have to do is look for that section that's like dividing and go right on top of that line and add another layer of circles. And if you are struggling with that, I would love to help you out. So call me over if you're not quite sure how to address it. But otherwise, we have just finished our third practice. Good job. Thanks for watching.